Xenoblade Chronicles is just around the corner, and as such, I forced myself to pay attention to all of those other games. The ones that didn't make it to Western Shores. The games that people, or at least I, wanted, yet we never got them for one reason or another. Those poor, unfortunate games never got an audience over here. Now, I'm not one for long intros, so if you want rules, they're in the video description. So, without further ado, this is Pirate Higamaru bringing you the top 10 games that should have made it out of Japan. Alright, this one is sort of, kind of breaking the rules, hence why it's in the 10th spot. The truth is, one or two of these games have been released to Western audiences, but they hardly count. What games am I talking about? Well, most of the games under the Bimani label. Bimani was a label used by Konami for all of their music games, DDR being the most well known. Now, DDR was popular for a time, but what about the other games? Poppin' Music, Guitar Freaks, Drum Mania, and Beat Mania all got the short end of the stick. It's true that both Beat Mania and Poppin' got a US release, but both games weren't well received by both the Bimani fanbase and mainstream critics. So I asked Konami to please release a competently done Bimani game in the West. Maybe it's a bit late, but I would really like to see a normal Poppin' Music game in Western Shores. What I love, though, is that Konami had several different music game franchises under their belt, and we got Rock Revolution and Beatin' Groovy, some of the absolute worst music games out there. Well done, Konami. Well done. In all fairness, this is probably one of the less worthy titles on my list, but it's my list. Said game is Makai Island, or as some may recognize it, Pirate Ship Higamaru 2. Surprisingly enough, Pirate Ship Higamaru was popular enough to warrant a sequel, and Capcom delivered by making Makai Island a Zelda-like adventure game. That means plenty of combat, puzzles, and it also had an overworld which you traversed by boat. Island served as dungeons too, so basically it was a Zelda clone. And a good one at that. Supposedly. And the best part was, the US was supposed to get it. It was censored, translated, and everything. So, why didn't we get it? I'm sure you know of Nintendo's policy during the late 80s that forbid third parties from releasing more than 5 games per year. Well, Capcom had released 5 games during 1988, and they had to kill Makai Island as a result. What a shame. And unlike a lot of unreleased NES titles, this one is actually difficult to find a reproduction card for. Oh well, at least we have Goof Troop, which is similar enough. America! Ladies and gentlemen, Metal Wolf Chaos is without a doubt, in my mind, the most patriotic game of all time. Seriously, you play as a giant mech piloted by the President of the United States, and you fight to take back your country from your evil Vice President. And it was made by From Software, who put out the well-received Armored Core series. How did we not get this? Seriously, I want answers. Alright. According to TV tropes, it was because they couldn't find a publisher in the US. Probably due to the completely over-the-top satire in the game, which was borderline offensive. Oh, and apparently Sega, who is one of the publishers they went to, yes, laughed before saying they would never sell. Like you're one to talk, Sega. Oh, Hideo Kojima. You sure do like to reference your old games. From Metal Gear and Snatcher to a poster of Police Knots Metal Gear Solid, your games are filled with references to your past. Wait, what's Police Knots, and why did we never get it? Well, it plays like Snatcher, so it's kind of like a graphic adventure with shooting segments. And it also features well-done full-motion video cutscenes, along with tons of voice acting. It also happens to be very wordy, so yeah, it's a Hideo Kojima game for sure. To be honest, I really know nothing about this game, and I'd rather not spoil anything for myself. Call me stingy, but that's just the way I am. Anywho, this basically made the list because it's Kojima's lost masterpiece in my eyes. I, at the very least, assume it's a masterpiece because Kojima. And it came in 4 flavors: PC, Saturn, PlayStation, and 3DO, and we never got a single one of those versions. Surprisingly, the Saturn version was supposed to be brought over here, but unsurprisingly it was cancelled because the designers couldn't sync the English voice acting with the cutscenes. How lame. I suppose it's worth noting that a translation patch for the game is out, but it requires you to own the actual game. Oh, and another thing, Konami. For the love of God, re-release Snatcher on Xbox Live or PSN, or both, I don't care which. People will buy it. Quick! Import-only games on the Super Nintendo. Fire Emblems, Mario & Wario, Psycho Dream? How about Clock Tower, First Fear? Yes, as the name implies, it is actually the first game in the cult classic survival horror series known as Clock Tower. Basically, the premise of the Clock Tower games is that you are being chased by a madman who is hell-bent on killing you, and you must hide from him and avoid being killed by him. Only catch is, you have no weapons. No sir, you aren't Chris Redfield, Ash, or a zombie-killing MacGyver. You're just a schoolgirl with no way to defend yourself. It's just you against a scissor-wielding maniac. That's not the only cool thing about Clock Tower, however. It's actually one of the first survival horror games, and I believe it was the first to include multiple endings. And of course we didn't get this game in America. Early 90s Nintendo was all about protecting the youth and what have you. I still really want to play this game though. Clock Tower HD collection, perhaps? It's not like this is the only game in the series, there are plenty of others. It's enough for an HD collection. I know plenty of people who despise games made entirely for fan service, but I've never had a problem with them. My favorite type of game that posts on fan service, however, is the crossover event. Games like Capcom vs. SNK and Super Smash Bros. Always get me excited for whatever reason. Sometimes I just like seeing what characters will make cameos or what have you. And I don't believe any game contained as much cross-company fan service as Namco Cross Capcom. No, it's not a fighting game, it's a strategy RPG. And no, none of those characters are in those super tight, super revealing outfits that Namco is famous for. And, to be honest, I'm really not too sure what's going on. All I know is that it has loads and loads of characters from both sides, and it's just filled with cameos. Why did this never leave Japan? Well, I can't find a concrete reason, but I heard a rumor that it was due to licensing issues. When you dig up a character like Bravo Man, you can be sure there will be some copyright issues. The good news is, there's a translation patch for it, but you need to own the original game. It can be a bit pricey, but not as pricey as one would expect. Alright, I'm kind of bending the rules again, but I really have no faith that this will be brought over to the US. What game am I referring to? Ace Attorney Investigations 2, of course! I was absolutely devastated when I heard this game wasn't being brought over. I wasn't angry like most people, I was more upset. I mean, it makes sense not to release it over here. They're expensive to translate and they rarely make any money. Business is business, and unfortunately this will happen. But still, I really want to see this game brought over here. I've heard nothing but positive things about the game too, which makes me really excited. Unfortunately, most fans have no way of playing the game. Not legally anyway. However, even pirating it proves to be difficult because of the lack of a translation patch. Please, Capcom. Ace Attorney fans are some of your least demanding. We just ask that you give us this one game. I like Sega. A lot. As such, I'm pretty sure a game like Sega Gaga was made for a person like me. Sega Gaga just seems so odd. It was apparently a Sega simulator, whatever that means. Apparently you spend most of your time conquering different development studios via fighting monsters. And by fighting, I mean shouting insults at them until they die. That sounds amazing. After you conquer the development studios, you start to develop the game. By that I mean, you tell your employees what to do. You can either overwork them, or let them work at their own pace. Or you can churn out garbage to make a quick buck. Now, why are you doing this? To stop the evil Sony, I mean Dogma Corporation, from taking over the video game world. Supposedly, neither of the video game sections are top of the line, but Sega Gaga delivers fan service full. It has cameos from all over the place. Rystar, Iswat, and even Clockwork Knight gets a nod or two. Heck, even Vic Tokai is a development house that you have to take over. And you know those two fat boss guys from Golden Axe? They rise out of a building Evangelion style at one point. I think it's blatantly obvious why we didn't get this game over here. The Dreamcast is basically dead by the time of this game's release, and if Metal Wolf Chaos is any indication, even Sega thinks some products are just too weird to sell over here. And they're probably right. After all, when the game was released in Japan, it was only released on Sega's online store. Even they didn't have too much faith in the game, and that was in its home country. It later sold out, but that online store-only deal basically guaranteed that Sega Gaga would never see Western shores. And I'm not gonna whine for a re-release. This is a game that could only work on a Sega console. It couldn't possibly work on any other system. It just wouldn't feel right. It's too Sega. Nintendo really doesn't seem to get the message that people in the West like RPGs. I mean, we had to beg them to give us Xenoblade, and there are still plenty of other games they need to give us. One of the most notable being, I don't know, a Fire Emblem game before FE7? Now, while I'm sure some of you may want FE6 or that re-release of 3, I'd much rather see Fire Emblem 4, or Fire Emblem Seisen no Keifu, or Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War, whatever you want to call it. I'll admit, I think the Fire Emblem fanbase might be overhyping the game, but I still really want to play it. After all, Nintendo has yet to screw up a Fire Emblem game, and I hear this is the best one there is. Combine that statement with the fact that there are several different mechanics which are unique to this game, and you can consider me interested. I also hear that it is a fairly dark and somewhat disturbing plot, which is pretty interesting. Please, Nintendo, this game is just begging for a re-release or a remake, and it's pretty popular in Japan from what I hear. You'd make some money off of it, and if you learned how to market RPGs in the US, it would just print money. Remember when I was talking about Nintendo and how they're all evil for not releasing RPGs over here? Yeah, same thing applies here, except it actually kind of made sense this time around. Mother 3? Haha, no. I'm talking about the original Mother. Now, hear me out. There were never any plans to release Mother 3 over to the West. The GBA was dead and on its way, so I don't feel like we were cheated or anything. Mother, on the other hand, was completely finished, translated, censored, and was even given a few new features that the Famicom version didn't have. It was 100% finished. It was just never produced. All we have are prototype copies floating around eBay and collectors' homes. That is simply inexcusable. Although, it does make plenty of sense. RPGs were never a smash hit in the US. Both Final Fantasy and Dragon Warrior got huge endorsements on Nintendo Power, and they were simply ignored by people. Their sales didn't even come close to their Japanese sales, and it was very likely that Mother, or Earthbound as it was to be called, would fall to the same fate. On top of that, the SNES's launch was looming, and Mother's sales would likely suffer because of it. In all fairness, it was a reasonable decision, but it still amazes and infuriates me that we never got the game. It was done. People's time and effort was put into it, and I'm sure there was tons of effort put into it. Nintendo shouldn't have simply canned the project like that. Thankfully, reproduction carts are easy to come by, and the ROM is widely available. Also, I'm sure Mother is very dated by today's standards, and its sequels outclass it in every conceivable way. But I don't think there is another game in the world that was so unfairly treated by the higher-ups. Hence why it is number 1 on my list.